Captain Elias Thorne had seen many battles in his career, but nothing could prepare him for the quiet devastation of the Zethurian war zone. He floated in the wreckage of a destroyed starship, the sharp hum of his suit's life support the only sound besides the distant crackle of dying energy shields. The blackness of space stretched endlessly, broken by scattered debris and fragments of alien metal that glinted like shards of broken glass. His mission was simple on paper: retrieve intelligence from the site and leave. But when Elias spotted the tiny form amidst the ruins, his mission changed in an instant. It was a child, or at least something that resembled what humans would call a child. The Zethurian infant lay curled in a protective pod, its soft bioluminescent skin pulsing weakly. Elias felt a strange pull in his chest. Years of military training and the cold calculus of survival had taught him to leave the enemy to their fate, but something about this fragile being refused to let him turn away. Ignoring the protocol blaring in his helmet, HUD, Elias carefully maneuvered closer. His gloved hands brushed debris aside until the pod's damaged cover creaked open. The child's large, luminescent eyes fixed on him, curiosity and fear mingling in equal measure. Despite the alien appearance, the elongated limbs, the translucent skin with faint streaks of glowing blue, the child emitted a sound that stirred a deep sense of recognition in Elias, a quiet whimper that demanded protection. He lifted the child into his arms, feeling the tiny weight of it against his chest. The pod's emergency systems powered down completely, leaving him with nothing but his suit's shields and life support. He knew the risks. Harboring an enemy child could be seen as betrayal, but Elias had never let fear dictate his choices. He made his way back to his ship, constantly aware of the distant silhouettes of Zethurian patrols scanning the wreckage. The journey back to the Artemis was tense. Every maneuver, every course correction was calculated to avoid detection. Elias activated the ship's stealth field, a human innovation that rendered the vessel nearly invisible to Zethurian sensors. Despite the technology, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The child in his arms was not just a life to be saved. It was a symbol, a decision that could ripple across species and galaxies. Once inside the ship, Elias placed the child in a secure, climate-controlled module. He monitored vital signs closely, noting the faint tremors that indicated stress. The child responded to gentle touches, curling into him whenever he drew near, and for the first time, Elias felt a connection that transcended language and species. The bond was fragile, but it was real. Word of his actions spread quickly through the human fleet. Some hailed him as a hero, a beacon of morality in a universe often defined by war and conquest. Others questioned his judgment, worried that harboring an alien, even a child, might ignite conflict with the Zethurians or compromise human security. Elias knew there was no simple answer, only choices, and the one he made was clear. He would protect this child, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, across the vast expanse of Zethurian space, the child's absence did not go unnoticed. The Zethurian queen, a figure of awe and authority, learned of the incident through her telepathic channels. The queen, with her tall, elegant form and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries, felt a surge of emotion that was rare even for her species. The child was her kin, a member of the faction that had been devastated in the skirmish. To find it alive in the care of a human ignited a mixture of fury and fascination. Back on the Artemis, Elias began the delicate task of understanding the child. Communication was a challenge. The Zethurian language was complex, involving tonal shifts, bioluminescent signals, and subtle telepathic cues. Yet the child responded to Elias' gestures and soft tones, indicating recognition and trust. Elias improvised, creating a series of simple visual signals and gentle sounds to establish basic communication. Progress was slow but steady. Days passed, and Elias discovered something remarkable. The child possessed abilities that humans could barely comprehend. It could sense emotional states, reacting to fear, anger, and compassion with subtle changes in its glow. At times, it seemed to anticipate danger, shifting or reaching out in ways that saved both their lives. Elias marveled at this, realizing that the child was not only intelligent, but also extraordinarily attuned to its surroundings, a survivor in the truest sense. The human crew of the Artemis watched with a mixture of awe and caution. Some were inspired by Elias' actions, seeing in him the best of humanity, courage, empathy, and the willingness to act against convention for the sake of what was right. Others worried about the political ramifications. The Zethurians were known for their uncompromising strength and unyielding rules. Harboring a member of their kind could easily escalate into interstellar conflict. Elias ignored the whispers and focused on the child. He spent hours studying its physiology, noting the bioluminescent patterns that seemed to correspond to mood and thought. He marveled at the intricacy of alien life, the way evolution had crafted something so delicate yet resilient. The child's presence transformed the sterile interior of the ship into a living, breathing environment filled with quiet wonder. As the Artemis drifted toward a safe rendezvous point, Elias reflected on his own past. He had fought wars, led men and women through impossible odds, and faced countless decisions where lives hung in the balance. Yet nothing had tested his humanity like this. The choice to protect rather than destroy was not easy. It required patience, understanding, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty. But he could not deny the truth he felt in his chest. This was the right choice. Unbeknownst to him, the Zethurian queen had begun mobilizing her forces, not to punish the human crew immediately, but to understand the one who dared defy the norms of her species. She watched with the patience of a being who had ruled for centuries, as Elias nurtured and protected the child. There was a spark of admiration in her thoughts, tinged with the cold fire of curiosity. Who was this human, and why did he act with such selfless courage? The tension aboard the Artemis grew as they approached the edge of Zethurian space. Scanners picked up patrol ships, their sleek forms cutting through the darkness with precision. Elia's new confrontation was inevitable. He could either surrender the child and hope for mercy or find a way to navigate the dangerous territory and protect the one in his care. His mind raced through possibilities, weighing risk against morality. Every decision mattered, every second counted. When the first Zethurian ship appeared on sensors, Elias relied on human ingenuity. Using an array of electronic countermeasures, stealth protocols, and careful navigation, he managed to evade the patrols. The child remained calm, sensing Elias' confidence and determination. It was as if the bond they had forged provided a shield stronger than any technology. Together, they moved through the darkness, two unlikely companions against a universe that often demanded brutality. At night, when the Artemis drifted in orbit around a lifeless asteroid, Elias would sit beside the child, speaking softly about Earth, about humanity, and about the stars they traveled between. The child responded in subtle ways, mimicking gestures, pulsing with light in patterns that almost seemed musical. It was not full communication, but it was enough. Enough to build trust, enough to form a bond that transcended species. Elias knew the challenges ahead would only grow more difficult. The Zethurian queen would not ignore this act of defiance, and human authorities would question his actions. Yet, in these quiet moments, he felt the unshakable certainty that protecting life, even that of an enemy, was the truest measure of humanity's strength. The child was a living testament to that belief, fragile yet enduring, dependent yet remarkable. As the Artemis prepared to jump to hyperspace, Elias tightened his hold on the child and whispered a promise. He would protect it, no matter the cost, no matter the danger. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Zethurian queen observed, her interest piqued, her fury simmering beneath a veneer of calculated calm. The stage was set, the players in motion, and the first act of a story that would test courage, morality, and the very essence of what it meant to be human had begun. In the silent expanse of space, Elias Thorne and the Zethurian child floated together, an unlikely pair bound by fate and choice. One act of compassion had already begun to ripple across civilizations, and the galaxy would never be the same. The journey to Zethurian space tested Elias like nothing before. Each day brought new dangers, from rogue asteroids to plasma storms that danced unpredictably across the void. The child remained nestled against him in the secure module, its soft glow pulsing with life. Elias often studied those luminous patterns, noting the subtle changes when the ship shifted or when alarms blared. Somehow, the child could sense even the smallest disturbances in the environment, responding with a quiet awareness that Elias found both humbling and reassuring. Despite the constant movement, isolation settled on Elias like a heavy cloak. He had always been comfortable with solitude during missions, but the weight of responsibility felt different this time. It was not just about completing an assignment or surviving an encounter. This life, fragile, alien, and dependent on him, was his responsibility entirely. He had no allies nearby, no immediate backup, and no clear protocol to guide him. It was just him, the child, and the vast unknown stretching in every direction. Communication with human command was limited. The more Elias reported about the child, the more questions arose. Scientists wanted samples, intelligence officers worried about diplomacy, and military leaders debated the risks of harboring a member of a species that could annihilate entire fleets. Elias ignored most of these messages. There were no easy answers. For now, the child's safety came first, and no argument about protocol or politics could outweigh that. Days into their journey, Elias noticed the first direct signs of pursuit. Zithurian scouts, sleek and precise, appeared on the ship's sensors. They didn't attack immediately, instead tracking the Artemis with a silent persistence that made his chest tighten. These patrols were efficient, deadly, and relentless. Human ships rarely encountered such precision. Elias knew that being discovered would lead to confrontation, and confrontation with the Zithurians almost always ended badly for humans. Yet as he monitored their approach, he saw an unexpected advantage: the child's instincts. The moment the scouts neared, the child's glow brightened in pulsing bursts, alerting Elias before the sensors registered any threat. Following the cues, he navigated the ship through an uncharted debris field. The patrols, unable to maneuver as easily, lost track temporarily. Elias marveled at the child's abilities. It wasn't magic, it was intuition, perception beyond human senses. And he realized, with a mixture of awe and fear, that this small being could change the course of their journey, maybe even the future of interstellar relations. Each encounter heightened Elias' sense of responsibility. He often wondered if he had made the right choice, but every time he looked at the child, he knew there was no alternative. To abandon it would be a betrayal of everything he believed humanity stood for. Compassion, courage, and the protection of life were not just ideals, they were the defining marks of his species. And now, in the cold emptiness of space, he had the chance to demonstrate them in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. As they moved deeper into Zithurian territory, Elias worked on establishing rudimentary communication with the child. Using a combination of light signals, hand gestures, and vocal tones, he slowly built a system of understanding. The child responded with increasing clarity, recognizing patterns and demonstrating comprehension. It was slow, painstaking work, but progress came steadily. Elias found hope in these small victories, and the child seemed to find comfort in the predictability and care he offered. Sleep was difficult. Every time Elias closed his eyes, the hum of approaching ships, the potential of ambush, and the weight of responsibility kept him alert. The child, however, adapted quickly. When Elias rested, it remained calm, its glow dimming in rhythmic pulses that seemed to soothe both of them. He began to notice a pattern. The child's responses were not just instinctive but emotional. It felt fear, curiosity, trust, and even what Elias would call gratitude. For a being so small and vulnerable, it carried an intelligence and awareness that exceeded any human expectation. Despite the calm moments, tension never fully lifted. One morning, sensors picked up a massive Zithurian cruiser approaching at high velocity. Elias understood immediately that this was no routine patrol. This was an attempt to intercept and retrieve the child. Every instinct screamed that they were being hunted. He prepared the ship for evasive maneuvers, activating stealth protocols and reinforcing the shield matrix. But the child's glow brightened before any warning signal appeared on the screens. It sensed danger in a way humans could not quantify, and Elias followed its guidance instinctively. He navigated the Artemis through a series of uncharted asteroid belts, narrowly avoiding collisions that could have destroyed them. The Zithurian cruiser, larger and less agile, struggled to match their course. Elias felt a surge of human ingenuity, the familiar thrill of turning obstacles into advantages. His hands moved with precision, guided by both training and the subtle cues from the child. Every time he glanced at the small form, eyes wide and luminous, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not just surviving, they were learning, adapting, and in some small way outsmarting a species that had conquered many worlds. During quieter moments, Elias reflected on the nature of the child. The bioluminescence, the rapid comprehension, and the instinctive guidance all suggested a being far more capable than its size implied. Perhaps the Zithurian queen had not fully realized the potential of this offspring. Or perhaps the child's abilities were unique, a combination of genetics and circumstance that made it extraordinary. Whatever the explanation, Elias knew that this small life represented more than survival. It represented a future in which understanding and cooperation could triumph over hostility. Yet the question of the Queen loomed. Elias had no illusions about her intentions. The Queen was known across the galaxy as both a brilliant strategist and a formidable leader. Her curiosity was matched only by her insistence on control. If she discovered him first, she could demand the child's return, or worse, see him punished for his defiance. Elias realized that avoidance could only delay confrontation. Eventually, he would have to face her, and when that time came, he would need more than stealth or speed. He would need courage, diplomacy, and unwavering commitment to the choice he had made. Preparation became a daily ritual. Elias studied Zethurian ships, strategies, and potential weaknesses. He trained in hand-to-hand combat and simulated ship maneuvers, knowing that confrontation was inevitable. He also continued to nurture the child, developing routines, providing nutrition, and reinforcing the sense of safety. In doing so, he created a balance between the practical and the moral, ensuring that both survival and compassion were maintained. Several nights into the journey, the Artemis passed near a gas giant whose storms churned with violent energy. Elias considered using the planet's electromagnetic turbulence to mask their passage. The child reacted instantly, its glow pulsating rapidly, signaling caution. Following its guidance, he adjusted course, entering the storm with calculated precision. The turbulence disoriented sensors from distant patrols, giving them a temporary reprieve. Elias realized with amazement that the child's instincts were not only protective, they were strategic. Its awareness extended beyond survival into a form of tactical understanding. During these long hours, Elias often spoke to the child, telling stories about Earth, about human achievements and struggles, about hope and courage. The child responded in subtle ways, adjusting posture, changing glow patterns, and sometimes making soft sounds that hinted at understanding. These interactions, though simple, reinforced a profound connection. Elias began to see the child not just as someone to protect, but as a partner in survival, a being whose abilities complemented his own. Finally, after weeks of careful navigation and tense evasion, they approached the edge of the Queen's controlled space. Elias felt the weight of anticipation. Beyond this point, the Artemis would no longer be in neutral or lightly monitored zones. Every move would be observed, and the likelihood of confrontation increased dramatically. He knew he could not turn back. Turning back would expose them to patrols already alerted to their presence. The only option was to proceed, relying on skill, caution, and the bond he had built with the child. As they neared Zethurian territory, Elias reflected on the journey so far. He had faced danger, isolation, and moral dilemmas, yet he had not wavered in his choice. The child's survival had become a measure of humanity's resilience and courage, and in protecting it, he had embraced the very essence of what it meant to be human: empathy, ingenuity, and unwavering moral resolve. In the distance, the faint outline of a massive Zethurian cruiser appeared on sensors, its presence unavoidable. Elias tightened his grip on the controls, heart steady, mind sharp. The child, nestled safely against him, pulsed with a steady light that seemed to convey understanding, trust, and anticipation. Together they would face whatever came next, a human and an alien bound by circumstance, choice, and the unshakable will to survive. The stage was set for the next chapter of their journey. The Queen would soon take notice, her curiosity and fury ignited by Elias' defiance. And when that day came, Elias would need every ounce of courage, every skill he had honed, and every moral principle he held dear. The galaxy watched in silence, the outcome uncertain, but one truth remained clear. Humanity, in all its complexity and determination, had the power to influence events far beyond its own world. Captain Elias Thorne felt the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him as the Artemis glided through Zethurian space. The child's soft glow illuminated the control room, casting gentle shadows across the sleek surfaces of the ship. Elias had spent weeks preparing, training, and navigating, but he knew that nothing would prepare him for what was coming. The Queen's forces were close, her attention already fixed on them, and every decision he made from this point forward could determine their survival. He studied the sensor readouts, noting the positions of patrol ships moving in precise formation. They were unlike human fleets, faster, more coordinated, and equipped with advanced detection systems that left little room for error. Elias' fingers moved deftly across the console, activating stealth protocols, deploying decoy signals, and initiating complex maneuvers designed to confuse and evade. Yet he knew that stealth alone would not be enough. The child's instincts were guiding him now, signaling subtle shifts in energy fields and sensor anomalies that humans could barely perceive. Together, they formed an unusual but effective team. Hours passed with tense quiet, broken only by the low hum of the ship's engines and the occasional flicker of the child's glow. Elias found a moment to speak softly, recounting stories of Earth, of human resilience, and of the countless explorers who had faced impossible odds. The child listened, or at least responded in its own way, its light pulsing rhythmically, as if absorbing the words and storing them in memory. These moments, brief and fragile, reminded Elias why he had made the choice to protect this being. It was not just duty, it was a moral compass guiding him through the darkness. Suddenly, alarms blared across the control room. A patrol squad had detected their presence, and a warning pulse sent through the ship's sensors indicated that the enemy was closing fast. Elia's heart rate accelerated, but he remained calm. Panic would be lethal. He relied on training, on intuition, and on the child's guidance. The glowing pulses intensified, indicating danger, but also suggesting an escape route through a nearby asteroid field. Elias adjusted the ship's trajectory, weaving through massive rocks that loomed like silent sentinels in the void. The patrol ships pursued relentlessly, firing precise energy bursts that lit up the darkness. Elia's maneuvers were sharp, unpredictable, and sometimes reckless, but always calculated. The child's presence was crucial. It reacted to changes in the environment almost before they occurred, warning him of subtle shifts in energy fields that signaled enemy strategy. Elias realized that this small being, which he had once seen as fragile, possessed an intelligence and awareness that rivaled even the most advanced human AI. They emerged from the asteroid field battered but intact. Elias allowed himself a brief moment of relief, only to notice a massive cruiser on the horizon, larger and more imposing than any vessel he had encountered before. This ship, he understood, would be the first direct confrontation with the Queen's forces. Its sleek design, its overwhelming firepower, and its precision made it clear that negotiation would not be an option. Survival would require ingenuity, courage, and the unusual alliance he had formed with the child. Elias activated an array of countermeasures, deploying decoy signals and activating stealth modules designed to distort the ship's signature. He also made subtle adjustments based on the child's guidance, navigating in ways that human technology alone could not have predicted. The cruiser approached, scanning with an intensity that felt almost personal. Elia's mind raced, calculating the odds, planning maneuvers, and anticipating enemy tactics. He could feel the child responding to every shift in energy, every movement of the enemy ship. Their connection was now instinctual, a silent dialogue that allowed them to operate as a single unit. Hours of tense maneuvering passed. The Artemis dodged energy bursts, evaded capture, and used the terrain of space itself to its advantage. Elias felt a mixture of exhilaration and exhaustion. The child's glow had grown brighter, more responsive, almost as if it thrived on the tension and danger. Elias realized that survival was no longer just about reaching a destination. It was about adapting, thinking creatively, and using the unique strengths of both human and alien together. During a brief lull, Elias examined the child more closely. Its small form seemed delicate, but there was a strength in its eyes, a spark of awareness that transcended species. He wondered what the Queen would think if she could see this now. A human, guiding and protecting her offspring, using compassion and intelligence to navigate danger. Elias knew that the Queen's perception of humanity would be influenced by this single act. The child was more than a life to protect. It was a symbol, a bridge between two species that might otherwise remain at war. As night fell over the distant stars, Elias prepared for the final stage of their journey. They would have to enter the inner territory, where the Queen's presence was strongest, and where every ship, station, and sensor would scrutinize their movements. He studied maps of the region, identifying routes that could provide cover, potential ambush points, and areas where his knowledge of human ingenuity could create advantage. Every detail mattered. Every decision carried the weight of life and death, not just for himself and the child, but for the fragile hope of peace between species. When they approached the edge of the Queen's inner domain, sensors detected another patrol, this one larger, coordinated, and more aggressive. Elia's hands moved quickly, calculating maneuvers, adjusting shields, and deploying countermeasures. The child reacted instantly, its glow pulsing rapidly in patterns that seemed almost musical, guiding him through invisible hazards. Together, they navigated through a field of energy disruptions, asteroid debris, and sensor traps designed to detect intruders. The skill, intuition, and coordination required were immense, but they managed to slip through undetected, for now. Elias allowed himself a brief moment to reflect. The journey so far had tested every skill, every instinct, and every moral principle he possessed. He had faced danger, isolation, and the judgment of both humans and aliens, yet he had not wavered. Protecting the child had become a personal mission, a testament to the values he believed defined humanity: empathy, courage, and unwavering commitment to what is right. The child's survival was proof that these qualities mattered, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As they moved deeper, the child's abilities became increasingly apparent. It could sense subtle shifts in energy, anticipate enemy movements, and respond to environmental changes in ways that seemed almost prescient. Elias marveled at this, realizing that the child was not just a passive participant in their journey, but an active partner, contributing to their survival in ways he could never have imagined. He felt a deep sense of respect for the young Zethurian, understanding that its potential went far beyond what even the Queen might have expected. Finally, they reached a point where avoidance was no longer possible. The Queen's flagship loomed ahead, massive, elegant, and imposing, a symbol of power and authority. Elias could feel the intensity of its sensors, the precision of its energy fields, and the weight of the Queen's presence, even from a distance. He knew that this confrontation would define the next chapter of their journey. There would be no room for hesitation, no margin for error. Survival would depend on ingenuity, courage, and the bond he had forged with the child. Elias prepared for the approach, reviewing every maneuver, every strategy, and every lesson learned during their journey. The child, sensing the impending confrontation, glowed with steady determination, its small form radiating a calm confidence that belied its size. Together, they were ready. They had survived storms, patrols, and the vast emptiness of space. Now they faced the most formidable challenge yet, standing before the Queen herself, defending life with intelligence, courage, and the unshakable belief in what humanity could achieve. As the Artemis moved closer to the flagship, Elias felt a surge of resolve. He had chosen compassion over convenience, bravery over fear, and morality over protocol. The child's trust and guidance had made them stronger, smarter, and more capable than either could have been alone. Whatever awaited them with the Queen, they would face it together, demonstrating the very best of human qualities in the heart of alien power. In the quiet moments before the encounter, Elias reflected on the journey. He had learned that survival was not just about strength or technology. It was about empathy, understanding, and the courage to protect life, even when it was difficult, dangerous, or inconvenient. The child had taught him as much as he had taught it, and together they embodied a principle that transcended species. The power of choice, guided by morality and courage, could shape the course of civilizations. The flagship's energy fields shimmered in the distance, a silent reminder of the challenge ahead. Elias tightened his grip on the controls, eyes focused, mind clear. The child's glow pulsed gently against his chest, a reminder that life, however small, was worth defending. They would face the Queen, and when they did, they would show that humanity's strength was not measured by weapons or fleets, but by intelligence, courage, and the unwavering commitment to protect those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy held its breath as the Artemis approached the Queen's flagship. Inside, two unlikely allies prepared to demonstrate that compassion and ingenuity could survive, even thrive, in a universe defined by power and conquest. For Elias and the child, this was more than a journey. It was a statement, a testament to the unshakable values that defined humanity, and the first step toward a future in which understanding and courage might bridge the gap between species. Captain Elias Thorne felt a mixture of tension and resolve as the Artemis approached the Queen's flagship. It was impossible to ignore the sheer magnitude of the vessel. Massive, elegant, and almost organic in design, the ship seemed alive, its surface rippling subtly with bioluminescent energy. Every sensor, every scanning field, and every defensive array radiated the presence of a civilization at the peak of its power. Elias understood immediately that negotiation would be delicate. Force alone would achieve nothing, and missteps could cost him and the child everything. Inside the secure module, the child glowed softly, as if sensing the rising tension. Elias placed a hand over its small form, feeling the warmth and subtle vibrations of life. The child responded by adjusting its posture, leaning closer and pulsing with steady light. Elias smiled faintly, knowing that despite the danger, they faced this together. They had survived storms, patrols, and the vast void of space. Now the ultimate challenge awaited, meeting the Zethurian queen herself. The Artemis was hailed by the queen's flagship. A holographic projection appeared in the control room, towering and majestic, showing the queen's full form. She was breathtaking, tall, regal, with bioluminescent patterns flowing across her skin, and eyes that seemed to see straight into Elia's thoughts. Her voice, calm yet commanding, filled the room. "Captain Elias Thorne, you have defied my laws by harboring my kin. State your reasons." "My actions were guided by a simple principle. All life deserves protection." It was as if the queen could feel the bond forming between human and alien, a connection forged through courage and empathy. "You value life over law," the queen said finally. "A rare trait among your kind, and yet by taking my kin you have challenged my authority." Elias nodded, acknowledging the truth. "I understand, Your Highness. I do not seek to challenge you, only to ensure the safety of one who cannot protect itself." "I seek a peaceful resolution," he replied. "I will cooperate, provide information, and ensure that no harm comes to your child. I wish only to demonstrate that humans and Zethurians can work together." Elias realized she was considering not just his words, but the evidence of his actions. The child's safety, the successful navigation through hostile territory, and the human ingenuity that had allowed them to survive against overwhelming odds. This was proof, tangible proof, that humanity's strength was not measured in weapons or fleets, but in moral courage, intelligence, and compassion. The queen paused, then said, "You will present yourself on my ship. I will assess your intentions and your capability to act in the best interest of our species." Elias nodded. It was a risk, but one he had to take. He prepared the Artemis for docking, keeping the child close and secure. The flagship's docking bay opened with a hiss, a vast chamber filled with light and subtle energy flows. Elias guided the ship in, careful to avoid any abrupt movements that might provoke alarm. Stepping onto the Queen's vessel was unlike anything Elias had experienced. The corridors seemed to pulse with life, their bioluminescent patterns shifting in response to movement. The architecture was fluid, organic, and yet precise, a reflection of a species that had mastered both science and art. Elias felt a mixture of awe and determination. He had faced hostile worlds and deadly opponents, but this encounter demanded more than skill. It demanded empathy, respect, and unwavering courage. The queen awaited him in a chamber filled with flowing light and energy. Her presence was overwhelming, yet Elias did not falter. He kept the child close, speaking softly to reassure it as they approached. The queen studied him with eyes that seemed to measure every intention, every thought, every heartbeat. "Captain Thorne," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber, "you have protected my kin. You have defied expectation and law alike. Explain why humanity should be considered worthy of trust." "I chose to protect your child not for reward, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. That choice defines humanity's strength. You act with integrity, yet your species is untested in the ways of Zethurian governance," she said. "How can I be certain that your values will hold under pressure, that humans will act with wisdom and not weakness? But I can show you that our actions, guided by morality and reason, can achieve outcomes beyond simple survival. The child is safe, we have avoided conflict, and I stand ready to cooperate for the greater good of both our species." She stepped closer, her bioluminescence shifting in subtle patterns that seemed almost like thought itself. "Your actions have preserved not just life but opportunity," she said. "The child is safe, and through your courage a bridge has been formed between human and Zethurian, yet challenges remain. Our factions are at odds, and this child holds potential that could determine the future of Zethurian society. I will act with wisdom, courage, and respect for your people. Your role is to ensure the child's safety and to aid in stabilizing the factions within our society. Your actions have proven that humanity's strengths are not measured in conquest, but in understanding and courage." Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The challenges ahead, rebuilding trust, fostering cooperation, and preparing the child for its future, would demand constant vigilance, intelligence, and courage. He looked down at the child, whose glow now radiated calm and reassurance. Together, they had not only survived, but had demonstrated the very best of humanity: empathy, ingenuity, and unwavering moral resolve. The child responded to his touch, pulsing in patterns that seemed almost joyful. Elias allowed himself a moment to feel pride, not in conquest, not in victory, but in having upheld the principles that defined his species. The queen continued to observe, her expression unreadable but her presence commanding. "Humanity's potential is now evident," she said. "You have proven that strength is measured not only in power, but in the choices made to protect life. The child's survival is testament to that truth. We shall see how your actions influence the future." He felt the weight of responsibility settle back on his shoulders. The path ahead would not be easy, and the decisions he made would echo across human and Zethurian civilizations alike. Yet for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of clarity. He had acted with integrity, protected life, and demonstrated humanity at its finest. As the queen turned away, Elias prepared to face the next challenges: fostering cooperation among the Zethurian factions, ensuring the child's safety, and proving that humanity could be a force for good in a galaxy often defined by war and power. The journey was far from over, but the hardest step had been taken. He had met the queen, defended life, and shown that courage, empathy, and intelligence could influence even the most formidable rulers. Together, Elias and the child moved forward into a future where the values of humanity, compassion, ingenuity, and moral courage, would shape not just their survival, but the destiny of civilizations across the stars. The galaxy, vast and uncertain, watched silently as this unlikely pair prepared to bridge the gap between species, proving that even in the face of overwhelming power, humanity's light could shine brightly. Captain Elias Thorne had crossed the threshold from survival into responsibility. The queen's trust had been earned, but he knew the hardest work lay ahead. The Zethurian factions were fractured, each holding power, each wary of interference, and each suspicious of a human guiding the child they regarded as pivotal to their future. Elias understood immediately that diplomacy would require patience, courage, and every ounce of ingenuity he had. Failure could cost not only his life, but the life of the child and the fragile possibility of interspecies cooperation. The queen had assigned him quarters aboard her flagship, adjacent to the child's safe chamber. Every movement was deliberate, every plan measured. Elias spent hours reviewing intelligence reports, holographic projections of factional territories, and data on the child's unique abilities. It was clear that the infant was not only a symbol of hope, but also a potential unifier, a key to stabilizing factions that had long been at odds. The responsibility weighed on him heavily, but he did not falter. The first council with Zethurian leaders was tense. Elias observed the room carefully, noting the subtle gestures, bioluminescent patterns, and vocal inflections that revealed both distrust and curiosity. The leaders had never met a human before, and the presence of the child only heightened the stakes. Elias spoke clearly and calmly, explaining his choices, his intentions, and the mutual benefits of cooperation. He emphasized the child's safety, the necessity of unity, and the potential for a future where human and Zethurian ingenuity could complement each other. At first, the council resisted. Old grievances, territorial disputes, and pride clouded their judgment. Elias listened patiently, acknowledging each concern while subtly guiding the conversation toward shared interests and mutual survival. He shared stories of humanity, our triumphs, our failures, and our capacity to choose compassion over convenience. He reminded the Zethurians that intelligence alone was not enough. Moral courage and the willingness to protect the vulnerable were equally important in shaping a civilization. The child, observing quietly from a secure platform, pulsed with soft light, as if lending silent support to Elias' words. Leaders could not ignore the small being whose mere presence embodied the consequences of Elias' choices. The child's instincts and subtle displays of awareness further reinforced the message. This human was not reckless, not impulsive, and not selfish. He acted with foresight and moral clarity. Slowly, skepticism gave way to tentative respect. Elias suggested practical steps to stabilize the factions. He proposed joint patrols to maintain peace, exchange programs for knowledge and technology, and shared governance structures where each faction had representation. The leaders listened, occasionally interrupting to challenge specific points, But Elia's calm reasoning and the visible trust between him and the child created an atmosphere of possibility. This was unfamiliar territory for the Zethurians, who were accustomed to hierarchical power and unilateral decisions. Elia's approach, combining strategy with empathy, was revolutionary. Throughout this process, the child demonstrated abilities that were increasingly remarkable. It responded to emotional cues from the leaders, subtly influencing the tone of the discussions. When anger or suspicion flared, the child pulsed in a calming pattern. When curiosity and openness emerged, its glow brightened. Elias realized that the child's presence was not merely symbolic. It actively contributed to the negotiation, bridging gaps that words alone could not. Humanity's courage had protected a life that was now shaping a civilization. The council session extended for days, yet progress continued steadily. Factions began to see the benefit of cooperation. Small agreements were reached: shared patrols, the protection of neutral zones, and recognition of the child's role as a unifying figure. Elias guided every discussion, ensuring fairness and respect. He also worked closely with the Queen, who remained a steady presence, evaluating his methods and decisions. The child remained at the center, growing stronger, more aware, and increasingly interactive, proving the wisdom of Elia's decision to protect it. As trust built, Elias implemented training programs for the child. He taught it basic principles of strategy, problem-solving, and understanding emotional cues. Though young, the child absorbed lessons quickly, demonstrating intelligence and adaptability that exceeded expectations. Elias marveled at the potential before him. This being, once a helpless infant, now held the power to influence the future of an entire species, and human guidance had been the key to unlocking that potential. Tensions were not absent. Rogue factions attempted to sabotage agreements, testing the resolve of the human and the loyalty of the child. Elias met every challenge with creativity, combining human ingenuity with the child's unique abilities. In one instance, an ambush was detected minutes before it occurred, thanks to the child's instincts. Elias guided defensive maneuvers that neutralized the threat without loss of life. The act further solidified the growing respect of the Zethurians, demonstrating that cooperation, foresight, and compassion could overcome aggression. Throughout these trials, Elias reflected on the meaning of humanity. Strength, he realized, was not simply technological superiority or fleet size. True strength was the ability to act morally under pressure, to protect the weak even when inconvenient, and to use intelligence creatively to solve problems. The child embodied these lessons, and together they demonstrated the best of human qualities to a civilization that had never encountered them in this form. As weeks passed, the factions formally agreed to a new council structure, guided by Elia's counsel. The child was recognized as a unifying figure, a symbol of hope and collaboration. The Queen publicly acknowledged Elias as a trusted advisor and protector, praising his courage and moral clarity. Humans, through his actions, had earned respect and influence across Zethurian society. This was more than survival. It was a triumph of character, a demonstration that humanity could shape the course of events far beyond its own world. In private moments, Elias allowed himself relief and reflection. The child, once a fragile being dependent on his protection, now interacted confidently with the Queen and her council. Its glow radiated awareness, trust, and understanding. Elias felt a profound sense of pride, not in conquest, not in accolades, but in the simple, powerful act of protecting life and fostering cooperation. Humanity's values had been proven, not through domination, but through compassion, courage, and intelligence. The Queen invited Elias to accompany her on a diplomatic mission to neighboring star systems, where human involvement could further stabilize relations and promote peaceful collaboration. He accepted, knowing that this was not merely a reward, but an opportunity to continue demonstrating the principles he held dear. Humanity's role in the galaxy, fragile yet undeniable, was now expanding beyond the earthbound limits he had once known. Elias also took time to communicate with human command, reporting the outcomes and explaining the strategic importance of protecting the child. There was awe and disbelief among the fleet, followed by recognition of the long-term potential. Humans had not conquered Zethurian space through force. They had earned respect through moral courage, ingenuity, and the protection of life. Elia's actions became a case study in leadership, ethics, and the power of choice. The child's development continued rapidly. It demonstrated abilities that were both intellectual and empathic, bridging gaps between factions and fostering cooperation in ways Elias had never anticipated. Its very existence had become a catalyst for peace. Elias understood that protecting life was not only the right choice, it could also alter the course of civilizations. Humanity's values, embodied in him and expressed through this small being, had tangible consequences across the stars. Elias and the child eventually returned to the Queen's flagship for a ceremonial acknowledgement. The Queen addressed the Council, highlighting the courage, wisdom, and moral clarity of humanity. She emphasized that cooperation, compassion, and intelligence could achieve what aggression and dominance never could. Elias felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had acted according to his principles, and those principles had shaped history in ways he could scarcely have imagined. The story concluded not with conquest or victory in battle, but with the quiet, enduring triumph of human values. The child, now a symbol of hope and collaboration, pulsed with gentle light as Elias stood beside it. The factions, once divided and suspicious, now moved toward unity. And humanity, through the actions of a single individual who chose compassion over convenience, had earned a place of respect in a galaxy that often valued power above all else. Elias gazed out of the observation deck, stars stretching endlessly before him. He felt the satisfaction of a mission fulfilled, not through force, but through empathy, ingenuity, and moral courage. The child glowed softly at his side, a living testament to the power of protection, trust, and collaboration. He understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy held countless challenges, but humanity's defining qualities, compassion, intelligence, and the courage to act rightly, would always provide a path forward. In that quiet moment, Elias made a silent promise. Wherever he went, whatever challenges lay ahead, he would continue to act with the principles that had guided him so far. Humanity's strength was not in conquest or domination. It was in the choices made under pressure, in the protection of life, and in the courage to stand for what was right. The child's presence, glowing gently beside him, was proof that even in the vast expanse of space, these values could shape the future. And as the flagship moved through Zethurian space, carrying a human, a child, and the hope of two civilizations, Elias felt certain that the light of humanity would continue to shine brightly, no matter how dark the universe might seem.